And a lot of schools, a lot of coverage tends to focus, unfortunately, a lot of times on the big Power Fours and mid majors and stuff. And we like to give some shine to some of the other divisions and other associations so that kids know that there are schools out there for them if they are committed student athletes. They want to continue to be an athlete and be a student. If they didn't develop, as fast as some of the other kids, we focus on the long game. So we want kids to know that there are a lot of schools out there and a lot of cool locations that have interesting and unique degree offerings at some of them. And yeah, so we like to highlight those things and have conversations with coaches like yourself. So basically what we're trying to do is present conversations to recruits and families that we wish maybe our guidance counselors or our coaches in high school would have had for us so we could have known about different schools and different places around the country and get outside of your bubble of New Jersey or wherever you may be. And you can always come back to your bubble, but you can go to St. Louis and have a great career and get an unbelievable education, or go to Naperville and get to run for some amazing coaches and be a part of some great teams and that sort of stuff. So that's what we're really trying to do over here.
Right. No, sounds awesome.
Cool. Is it thumbs up, Jim?
Thumbs up, sir. We are live.
All right, we are live. We are back on the track, back on the cross country course. It's one of the things we do over here at Airey Bros. One day we're going belly to belly with a wrestling coach, and then the next we're going live with a cross country and track coach. Our guest tonight is a cross country and track and field coach. He's in his 23rd season as a men's and women's cross country coach, his 14th season as the head men's and women's track and field coach. He was the 2024 USATF National Women's Coach of the Year. He led the Bears to their second national title in program's history for women's track and field. Um, the school was named the USTFCCA Program of the Year for the second straight year. He's been a multiple national coach of the year, multiple Midwest region cross country coach of the year. He has a bachelor's degree in physical education from North Central, master's degree in secondary education from Southwest Missouri State. Shout out to Coach Rutledge. He was inducted into the North Central Athletic Hall of Fame, and he is a father of three. Tonight, we are joined by Washington University's Jeff Stiles. Jeff, how are you doing tonight?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we are excited to talk with you and we'll get things started here. We like to do a little bit of a through line with our guests to make connection. I was just explaining to you before what we try to do with having coaches from different divisions and different organizations and associations is to highlight those things, but we also try to bridge the gap with maybe even a little bit more of a personal connection. So, as I mentioned, I was a junior college cross country All-American, and although I did go to Monmouth University, when I was making my final decision to leave junior college at Ocean County College to go to the four-year school, it came down to Monmouth University and North Central College in Naperville,
Wow.
Illinois.
Okay.
And I don't know if you remember, but it was the winter of 1996. And I believe you and I were on a run together. And I believe you were originally from Iowa. And
That's
we
correct.
might have talked a little bit about some wrestlers. I think maybe you had some wrestlers from either the University of Iowa or Iowa State that you might have been connected to your family or
Yeah.
something.
My Sunday school teacher was Tim Krieger, who was a
Yes.
three-time national champion at Iowa State and runner-up his sophomore year. So that is wow, that's jogging the memory. That's a long time.
Yeah. And then another little connection for you too, as I mentioned, I'm from New Jersey. And so I was in the South Jersey sectional of New Jersey, and I was also in a group two school. And one of the athletes that I chased around for the first 3 years of my high school career was a gentleman by the name of Matt Brill.
Wow. Okay. Now you're throwing some real surprises. That's a teammate, national champion. Yeah. Yeah, he was a soccer player and not really much of a runner. Like I don't think he ran cross country. He just ran track or vice versa. Um, but yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, he was a year older than I was, but an absolute stud at North Central.
Yeah. So there's a little through line for you. So
Wow.
we are honored to connect with you. And actually, even one more thing I can say, um, in the probably around 2009, maybe 2008, 2009, I had an athlete I was coaching at Red Bank Regional High School. His name was Matty Metlitz. And his two final choices for schools, it came down to Washington University and MIT. He ended up staying a little bit closer to home and going to MIT, but he was definitely looking to come to your
Yeah.
school and run for you. So small world just keeps getting smaller as we get older. And Jim, where do you want to start off tonight with Coach?
Let's start off with North Central and the legendary coach that he came up under the tutelage under and the dynasty there and how he's kind of transferred at WashU.
Yeah. Yeah. So North Central, Al Carriers. You want me to talk about Al?
Just the impact that he had on you and that program had on you to kind of
Yeah.
do what he did at North Central at WashU.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one, we don't have the time to do it, but I'll try to cover it the best I can because that's transformational. People often ask, like, why do you coach? Like, what's your why? And uh, my why is I received a transformational experience through Al, and I want to be able to give that back. Yeah. So his impact is profound. He so genius in so many ways, and the older I get, the more genius I realize he was. He recognized the power of community, the power of connection, the power of relationship, the power of being deeply connected through sacrifice towards a common vision and getting people to buy in. And if you coach long enough or you just coach for just a couple of years in any sport, I think it's you recognize the difficulty of consistency. It's one thing to put a team together, you do it for a year or two and it goes well. But to be able to do it consistently year after year after year, man, you start to realize when you're putting, 18 to 22-year-olds on a team every year and you lose seniors, you gain new first years. You don't know how the juniors are going to do as seniors. You don't know how the first years are going to transition to college. There's so many unknowns that no matter how good the culture is one year, you're really changing the dynamic drastically the next year. And so it requires great leadership, but that also requires then development of leadership. And then, it's one of those where, let's say a class is really good right away and they're getting major experience. And then all of a sudden, those seniors are gone and you're bringing new people up. Like there's so many different ways to look at it, but it is really hard to do something consistently. And so one, just throw a stat out there. Al Carius finished his career with 47 consecutive men's cross country conference championships. And I just think that stat is just ridiculous. And then I believe, he had, I'm going to say, since 1973, his teams were first or second, I believe 38 or 40 times. So I'm not smart enough to do the men. That was till like 2020 or whatever. So I'm not smart enough to do the math on that. But whatever that the number is just astronomically high in percentage, like 80 to 90% of the time he's finishing first or second. So one, you can look at the stats and it's just like to be a part of something where you just, we on my class, we were second, first. So we were our senior year, we're almost going to be one of very few classes that have never not won. So, Al had never ever mentioned winning. Like when I was on the team, like he just talked about process and relationship and the love of what you're doing. And he modeled it by just being there. And so I just remember so many different things that have nothing to do with running that greatly impacted me as a runner, that greatly impacted me as a coach. For example, my sophomore year, I believe it was, I had broken up or my girlfriend had broken up with me, and I was devastated. And I came into his office just to tell him, just so he knew, thinking it would be like a 30-second conversation. And and we had like 3 minutes for our team meeting. So Al sat intently and listened, and then said, okay, we're not done. Come back to me after practice. So came back, he gave me a book. It was a book on relationships. And he said, I want you to read this. When you're done, come back, we'll talk. And so I was a terrible reader. I had a reading disability. So I was a super slow reader. And I found it so meaningful and very, it spoke to me because it was very specific to what I was going through. So I remember making through the book in like 2 weeks, which for me is, a personal record, and coming back. And then he just kind of walked me through kind of like, all right, I want you to touch base with me, each week. I want you to let me know how you're doing. And it was as a person, not as a runner, knowing that, yes, that would impact me as a runner, but he wanted to be there for me as a father. And my dad was a great man, but he was, 5 hours away in Iowa or however far we lived away. So that's a story I'll always remember. And then I just remember so many times where, we're on one of my favorite parts of North Central was morning run. And so when I got there in 1994, the team had just set the national record for team points. They scored 32 points. They went 1, 2, 5, 6, 25. Matt Brill was 25th as a freshman. We went 1, 2, 5, 6. We returned 2, 5, 6, 25. All right. And so that's the team I was walking into. And I remember, just showing up, and you really have no idea as a freshman what's going on. And I just assumed I would make an immediate impact. I think the second race, I was the last finisher in the race for our team. And, but I remember looking back and just how we had an optional run every Monday at 6:30 a.m. on the corner by the field house. And Al was there every day, and I was there very sporadically my freshman year, and eventually kind of stopped going as I adjusted to school. I'd say my motivation level, I didn't really know what it was to be a motivated runner. I was used to being the fastest guy on the team. And then I remember one day just things were starting to change, and I hear about morning run, and I heard Al was always there. People said it was fun, said it was cool, but I, again, just adjusting to school. And I think I was being challenged with my motivational level. How motivated was I? And then I remember making it out to my first morning run in probably like, I don't know, 6, 7 weeks. And there was something different. And I remember Al, he would always just greet us with morning, boys, and just always excited. We played games at different points of the run. But I remember him making a point. He saw a freshman who had talent, who really hadn't figured it out yet, but had come. And I remember him saying something along the lines of like, hey, what do you know? It's Jeff Stiles. Great to have you out here, Jeff. And like I felt like he was very intentional about making it public that I was there. And I believe that was his way of making me accountable, like if I wasn't there in the future, but did not poke fun or that I hadn't been there, just showed excitement that I was there. And I remember finishing that run. And then from that point on, the rest of my career, I always looked forward to morning run. And by showing up and doing it, he taught me that running generally was fun. It's one thing to say that running is fun. It's another thing to do it. If running is fun, you would want to do it. And my high school coach, was a great coach, he just didn't run. And so for me, it was a transformational time of learning that running was a lifetime activity and that running was fun. And those were two mind-blowing concepts I'd never seen modeled and was slowly getting exposed to. And I think those things of seeing the way he cared and seeing how much he loved our sport were two of the biggest things that really had an impact on me. And I believe that's really what allowed him to have such a legacy. His pillars were caring for people and passion for running. And I believe also passion for competition, although I was yet to be exposed to that. But later kind of learned he was also a fierce competitor.
Coach, I'm glad you mentioned the morning runs because that was one of the things that stood out to me as a recruit. Like, oh my gosh, these guys get up every morning at 6:30 to go run. That was right up my alley. Had the reflective sashes, like the
Yeah.
old crossing guards.
Safety.
I was like, this
Yeah.
is the
Yeah.
coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
And I want to get into intrinsic motivation with you a little bit, but
Yeah.
before we do that, one last thing about North Central, and the other thing that really stood out to me and was something that was, I guess, maybe a selling point or something that I wanted to be a part of was the candy stripe uniforms. Can you
Mm,
can you talk about the impact of that, in a world where you know, teams have different uniforms for every meet or every other
yeah.
weekend. And
Yeah.
can you talk about the tradition and the pride of putting that on and what that meant to be a North Central cross country and
Yeah.
track athlete?
Yeah. So we had a standard, I don't remember what it looked like. We had a standard uniform we'd wear for the first part. And then we get to the championship season and we'd wear the candy stripes. And so the candy stripes are just, vertical striped uniforms. And I think a lot of people think if you're not part of North Central, you probably think it's a joke or think it looks funny. But it was something where when you make championship season, you had the privilege to wear that. That was a huge deal because it was a generational thing. This had been done. No one had never, like they've never not qualified for nationals. And 85% of the time they're in the top two. So when you're wearing the singlet, it was like the men of yesteryear were running with you, you know. And so it was a long time ago when I would have worn one. It would have been 1998, so or 97 in the fall. So 27 years or whatever it is, and it's just one of those things where um, it's a pride thing. It's you're running for something greater than yourself, and so I think it's simple. I would compare it to like, obviously Major League Baseball is a lot different, but when you view like the pinstripes of the Yankees or whatever, same concept. And I believe that if you're Division One, Division Two, Division Three, you're small class in high school, big class. When you win the championship, like when you're on the podium, you don't feel different. No one's saying, "Oh, we're only D3." When we're D3 winning nationals, like we view ourselves as a national champion, and I think that's true at the high school level, the college level. And so to me, it was something where uh, we had the opportunity to stay connected with our past, and I think it was a way to help you realize that you really were a part of something special. And so it's hard to articulate it, but it was definitely something very tangible.
Was that something that went into the design of the uniforms that you all have now?
Yeah, yes. Wow, you're good. Yeah. So Ray Williams, he is a former teammate of mine. He was a hurdler, and so we had been talking about um, getting postseason uniforms, and same thing. So we went with a similar model, in that I think part of the idea of the cross country uniform of the candy stripes, it's easy to find when you're in a field of 200 to 250. Now 294, I think, is D3 national cross country. So it's hard to find your teammates. So having something that, if it's red and white, how many red and whites are there? There's a lot. There's one candy stripe. So yeah, that definitely was part of our thought process there as well.
It's interesting you say that because well, I coached one year, we did something on the exact opposite of that where we were on the come up and all year long we had just straight yellow uniforms and everyone could see us. And then for the state championships, I changed it and we wore all black with no writing on the jerseys. So no one, we just kind of blended in and knew where we
Yeah.
were. We went from the year before not even qualifying for the state meet to finishing sixth in the state. And it was
Wow.
like, I love those little like, games or things that you do but yeah,
Yeah.
sticking out so you can see, your
Yeah.
runners in a
Yeah. Yeah.
field of
Yes.
300 is very
Yeah.
important.
Strategy. I mean,
Yeah.
however you want to play it, the way you did it, flip it, the way Al did it, for sure. I think
Yeah.
that's kind of fun part of coaching.
So let's,
Coach,
oh, go ahead, Jim.
you bring up the consistency at North Central and how that was something that you picked up from your coach year in and year out. It's one thing to win it once or twice, but to do it year in and year out. And I'm curious with the academics at WashU, and it's a Division III school, so you're not giving off scholarships. So you have two things going against you off the top. So how do you continue to do that year in and year out with those big barriers to begin with?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think one, every D3, so you're right, with those are challenges. I mean, every D3 school, no one can offer scholarships. There are, there's pros and cons. I mean, you're looking at it in like WashU can cost a pretty penny. Like when you actually look at what most people pay, our financial aid packages are very, very good. We're actually ranked, I think, #1 in financial aid this last year. But we're going against state schools that are just going to be much cheaper. Also, kids who are looking at WashU generally are looking at schools that all are going to cost a lot. And so, sometimes you lose kids that would like to go to WashU because they're going to go somewhere else cheaper, and you can't blame them when that happens. And vice versa. Some year we might get a kid that just gets an academic scholarship to WashU, and they would have picked some other school. And so that being admitted, it's hard. Being able to afford it can be as or more challenging depending on the student. And then academics, I mean, that plays a paramount role in their decision and also in how we coach. And so that definitely is a challenge. When I went to North Central, I went to run. I studied, I did my best in school, but when I picked the school, I wasn't a great student. To me, B's were something I worked hard for and was proud of. And here, students I'm getting have oftentimes never seen a B. I was in nowhere A's. And so it is a challenge. And I know there are a lot of other great D3 programs out there that also are doing this. We're not alone. So I don't want to feel sorry for myself. But definitely I think that's part of the challenge, is recognizing when I was at Missouri State, back then, Southwest Missouri State, when I was at Missouri State as a grad assistant, I remember seeing this, like where, coaches, because they were on scholarship, there was much more of an expectation of you work school around us, and at WashU it's the opposite. It's they're here, that's why they picked WashU. They want to run, but they're doing the research. All right, I want to go into medicine, I want to go to biomedical engineering. Where else can I run? They come up with a list, figure out where they can afford, what might be the best fit. And so that is a big challenge. And it's something that's kind of fun in a way, that you feel good about. These kids are the biggest challenge is getting them to go to bed. And so that is a factor we play when we travel. We choose to not, if it's not a championship meet, we are not running the course the day before. We are leaving the latest possible time to miss the least amount of class, which means we may leave at 4:00 on a Friday, get to a hotel at 9:00 at night. The championship season, we're definitively going to run the course. But those are all decisions that are philosophically made because of why they chose the school. And then when in training, you can have something written out on paper that looks great and according to a physiology textbook is perfect. But when you look a kid in the eyes and you can see, okay, this kid does not look rested. This kid looks worn out. This kid looks, first years in particular, you're always checking for them because deer in headlights at school gets hard. And so that's, I feel like, part of the skill of coaching at WashU and like institutions is what Al, my coach, would call the art of coaching. It's recognizing the whole human, the whole person. And if the reason they're there is to go to medical school and they have a biology final on Wednesday and they're telling you, Coach, I've been studying for this for the last 2 weeks and I know I'm going to be up late and we got morning practice. Like, you got to make adjustments. You sometimes kids maybe they'll get sleep, but emotionally they're just fried and taxed from the output they put into school. And so you can see, like, the second rep in, they got nothing. And I've learned it's generally better to call it a day or make an adjustment than it is to push through, because the reason these students are tired is because what Al would call your emotional container. And it's just, your emotional energy that you have this imaginary container in it, your social life, your school life, your work life, your spiritual life, your home life, like every part of you. You go into a breakup. That's why Al cared, because he understood, like, hey, this Jeff's a person, and I got to care for the whole person. And I think for me, part of that whole person, a much bigger piece, is the academic piece. When I was at North Central, like I went to bed at 9 to 10, got up at 6, took a nap, probably 3 days a week. I'm getting 8 to 10 hours a night of sleep with low stress. I studied, but school just wasn't as difficult as it is where I'm at now at WashU. And again, that's something I've learned to enjoy and appreciate. And so I think it is something that's really imperative. And I've learned oftentimes less is more. Uh, that's where I've had to learn to differentiate in how I trained at North Central, which was pretty much do more, push through, because I wasn't expending the same level of academic stress that the young men and women that I coach do. It's not that I didn't study, it's just the content I studied wasn't as difficult. And for me to be a PE teacher, I felt confident if I'm going to bed, I'm good with a B. If I know I have a workout the next day, I have a test, and I'm kind of at my wit's end, and I'm like, man, I'm not learning anymore. Okay, I'm going to bed. Kids here will just push, and they will push, and they'll push till they got nothing left. And most of them are not holding it for practice. And so the kids that have the capacity to really find that balance are the ones that hit the home runs. Most kids figure it out, but it takes you a year or two to kind of navigate those waters. And so you can look at a kid and say, wow, this kid's not running as well. Maybe they're slower than they were in high school. And all of a sudden they take off. A lot of times it's just due to balance, stress management, time management, and they're all tied together. So we've had kids come in and they're killing it first day to the day they graduate. And we've had students come in that it takes a year or two, and they kind of find their stride. And it's generally linked to just time management, stress management. If school's not under control, they will not run well, because that's why they're here. And for me, I enjoy the fact that they are generally students first, and I got to get them to, okay, go to bed the same day you wake up. That is how you get good. 8 hours of sleep. And these students will do something really special in life because they are willing to push. And my goal is to help them find balance so it can be sustainable. Because even if they're doing really well in biomedical engineering, doing well in chemistry 100, whatever it is, sustainably, oftentimes they'll come in and they'll be doing things that they're working really hard and they're getting the A, but then they're just toast. And so running is the litmus test to show them, like, wow, okay, you're not able to run at your capacity right now. Let's look. If they were just taking classes, they may never realize that, and they would just burn the candle at both ends. And I think running kind of shows, it kind of exposes to being the whole person. And then I think they'll find out they're a lot happier when they find that balance. And running kind of holds you accountable to that, because you can't cheat the system in running. Over the course of time, eventually it's just not going to work. You got to get sleep. You got to find rest. And for me, that's a huge part of our coaching. When we're doing things, of understand that whole piece. So my first year at WashU, we had a defending conference champion, Brooke Lane, in the 10K, couldn't go to the conference meet because she had to take the MCAT, which is your board score for a medical school. First time she took it, she just didn't do well enough. And so she needed to take it again. The only date was the day of the conference championship. And that was my first year at WashU. And I'm thinking, what? How is the conference champion not going to be there? And that's when I kind of learned what it meant to be WashU. Like, yeah, she tried to do it. She did it. It just didn't go well. She needed to retake it. So she took it. And then that was a junior year, came back senior and hit it out of the park, and just missed being All-American in cross country, guided us to a fourth place team finish, best ever. But as a junior, she could not defend her conference championship in the 10K at conference because of school. And that's I was like, okay, this place is different.
Coach, I've heard you say that disappointment is a good thing. Was that a mindset that you had going into WashU, or is that something that the curriculum
Hmm.
of the school kind of made you adapt to?
Yeah. I would not say that was my mindset going in. I think it's something I've learned through just life. You know, fail forward. Our four core principles we've come up with, we kind of established in the last couple of years. Number one is stolen from Al and just asked his permission. That's run for fun or personal best. Number two is fail forward. And so that's something more or less through life. I think a lot of it through parenthood and coaching, just kind of, yeah, you live long enough. I think you experience failure. And so I would not have said that as an athlete. I can look back and see all of my quote failures as an athlete made me a better athlete. Um, I finished, gosh, each state meet I ran in high school, I finished like near the back. And my senior, I was able to win the state title in the mile. But so I ran 4 state championships in cross country, 3 in track. So I would say 5 of them went horribly. One went okay, and one went amazing. And the amazing one was last. And I think it's built upon all of these quote failures. And as an athlete at North Central, each season built upon the next. Those are things you just kind of figure out as an athlete. I think when I was 26 and became the head coach in cross country at WashU, I wasn't smart enough to kind of put all that together. So that's definitely something I hardcore believe now. And again, I think that's through a lot of quote failure myself. And I would just define failure as falling short of a goal for this purpose. So when you fall short of a goal, you reevaluate and get better. And that's how we do things. And that's how, for everyone, I think if we embrace that, then that's how you're really going to excel in life.
Coach, you're coming up on your 24th year, and you talk about the academic rigors of the school and time management and stress and those sorts of things. In your time, have you noticed, is that something that student athletes have gotten better at, or is it something you have to deal with a little bit more as the years have gone on?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the students every year are like 18 to 22. So it's just case by case. I would say the percentages are similar. It's a, I don't actually remember, exactly what it was like when I first got here. I would say, as you know, the number of distractions out there have grown immensely. So I think that, I feel like we always have a few kids who do it they're superhuman. And they're able to do it at a level where it's like, it's not fair to put it on other people. They model it exceptionally well. I think do it way better than I could do it. And we usually have a handful of kids that struggle and that, generally freshman year, sophomore year, and they're figuring it out. Then the rest team's somewhere in the middle. So I think it's similar. I do think that just the number of distractions are, you know, um, just so much more. So I think that is, like before I never owned a cell phone before I got to WashU. I was required to get one when I got here for practice and safety purposes. And now when we go to team meals, like they know like, okay, leave my cell phone on the bus. They're not allowed to have their cell phone in the restaurant. And that's something that's more recent. That's not something that we implemented that in the last like 5 years or whatever. And I think that's representative of the distraction. And I think that's and I think students now they like that. They don't maybe some newcomers are murmuring under their breath, but I think in general people appreciate it. They like it. Last year I remember being really proud when I failed to mention that as we're getting off the bus to remind them, and the captain stood up and said, "Remind you to leave your cell phone on the bus." And I'm like, "Hey, that's a that's that was a really cool moment for me. It's like, okay, ownership, belief in what we're doing, and in something that is, I think, it's a counterculture message that I think is maybe gaining some steam, or maybe it's not so counterculture. People are recognizing that, yeah, face to face is good, and let's take advantage of that.
And what have you seen in terms of how the sport has evolved since you've been at the school? And Has that made your life easier recruiting?
Okay, so how's the sport evolved? Yeah, that's a great question. So I would personally, so I may not go the way you were, if I'll answer it the way you want, so I can re-answer it if I don't get it right with what you're thinking. So I look at for myself pre-COVID, post-COVID, and pre-COVID. So 2019, the fall of two was it? Yeah, the fall of 2019. Um, uh, like I look back and like felt we had things uh, rolling really well, and just yeah, felt it was a well-oiled machine, and things made sense, and it had just built upon each year. Not that it was ever perfect, but like it was going exceptionally well. And post COVID, like shoes technology, pace lights, all these different things. Division 3 running in general has exploded. So I'm going on performance. And I remember coming back and like we had all this experience and confidence of always doing well. And then we missed that 1 year. We weren't allowed, to compete outdoors. Then cross country, the next year, the fall of 2020 didn't exist. This winter didn't exist. And so by the time we came back to it in 2021, what I saw was we went from where I thought we had like just this incredible experiential confidence from year after year after year. There's always people passing it down who were at nationals, and all of a sudden, like we showed up in 2021, and I recognized like we really didn't have that because we had lost that gap year in there, and it was kind of like we gotta like you don't just confidence comes from experience. And it's one thing to watch, but we had very few people on that team who had done it. And so from that point forward, we've had to rebuild. And so we've been rebuilding the culture, I feel like. And that's been kind of fun. And from even training wise, where I think with technology, I'm a Timex old school guy. And like recently I've been all right, like been prodded to use heart rate monitors and use more sciencey stuff, believing that there's still a lot to be said for um, some old school stuff where you need to be able to intuitively run well. You need to be able to run intuitively to run well at cross country nationals. Cross country nationals, even more so than track nationals, but I think also at track nationals, um, the the uh, the insanity of cross country nationals, 294 people on a course that oftentimes don't hold the number. You can have a heart rate monitor, you can have a watch telling you all sorts of information, but first place is 1 point, and the 100th place is 1 point, and 294th is 294 points, and the least point wins. And so, how to execute a great race at cross country nationals is very hard. And the bigger the field gets, when I was an athlete, I think the D3 field was like maybe 180, something like that. I can't remember if that's right, but around that. It grew to like 210. Now it's I think 294. So the field has gone, I mean, it's grown by 110. So whatever percentage is massive. So to navigate that, I think that has changed the landscape a lot. And I think the quality of of athletes at the high school level due to technology with just the amount of information out there, high school coaches. I mean, like you're talking about yourself coaching high school, like the number of like people who know what they're doing versus just the gym teacher who gets an extra stipend to do it. I feel like those people are less and less, and more people are doing it because they're passionate about it. So like the pretty good team has a great coach. And so all of a sudden, like everyone has a great coach. I know some of the best coaches I know are coaches that are programs that they're not powerhouse programs, but they're amazing coaches, and they're doing amazing work. And all of a sudden, they'll have athletes at nationals doing something really well, at programs like people have never heard of. And I think that it's changed a lot where, like what Al did at North Central, I just feel like, one, it's Al, and I feel like no one will ever be Al. And then two, I feel with just the knowledge out there, we'll probably never see another North Central. And again, I would put most of it on who Al was as a person. Yeah. So technology in that ways, I feel like has changed quite a bit. And then with that, the negative to it is sometimes there's just so much, maybe too much information. Like, I'm just learning how to use a Garmin watch, and like, it's overwhelming the amount of information. Like if I was first time ever, so I'm not a big Garmin person, but with our team using heart rate monitors, I'm like, okay, I got to learn how to use this. So I started using it. And the first thing was all of a sudden I'm getting all these text messages on my phone, on my watch. And first thing I'm like, okay, I didn't know that was even a thing. And the first thing I do is I call one of my athletes. I'm like, hey, how do I get this off of my watch? And so that was the first thing. Like for my team, when they come back this fall, I'm like, okay, no one should be getting notifications in practice or a meet. I can't imagine like we're going to the line, we're doing a run out, and you get a text message or an email about grad school or something. And some kid's devastated 3 minutes before the start of the national championships. That would be a travesty. Or you're on the runway for a triple jump and you look down, you get whatever. So I'm like, man, to eliminate this information and just be able to focus on what you're doing is something that I feel like is really hard for people to do. So I've read multiple athletes that are really successful where it's like one of the first things they started doing was deleting their social media. Cause like you're like, Cindy McLaughlin, I think I read something about her, Parker Valby, whatever, these different athletes that are at different times, getting off because it is such a big distraction. And I did not grow up with that. So like in my mind, I can't relate. I don't know what it's like. My first social media ever, personal social media, is Strava, and I've never done Facebook, never done anything. And for me, I feel like I'm on my phone too much. For me, I feel like I'm on my computer too much. And I don't have anything to be on other than return emails, text messages, things like that. So I think that what these kids are into now, these challenges, is real, and it's something that I believe running can be a huge outlet. The community of our team, the sport itself. I don't care if you're D2, D1, D3. Like I think everyone needs that. And I believe no matter who you are, anyone can find a place to run. So if anyone listen to this that is like, high school athlete that's wondering if I can run in college, like everyone can run in college. It's just a matter of finding the school. If you're set on running in college, I guarantee you can run in college. You just have to find the place. Because someone runs in college doesn't mean you're faster than high school kids. That's not true. There can be a place for every single person. And I believe our sport, one of the reasons is the best in the world is because, man, you can do it the rest of your life. Your personal record. I mean, how cool is that? I played basketball in high school. I wasn't very good, but I played basketball. And like, if you ride the bench, like you don't really see your improvement. You don't know, how much have I improved? Whereas a runner, you can see that. And that's something that's really fun. And I work with my own children. I have a 12-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 17-year-old. And, my goal is not for them to be an Olympian, but to enjoy the sport and like to enjoy getting better. And so that's been really fun to watch that and to be a part of that process.
Are they runners?
They are. They all have different addition, so they all love it. My oldest is also she's really good at musicals, and that's probably her greatest passion. My middle child, 15, her biggest passion, right? Arts, crafts, and cooking. She's an amazing cook and loves cooking, which has been a great reward for the entire family. And then my youngest, my son, he's the one who's obsessed. He doesn't like running, he's obsessed. And so trying to channel that so that he continues to like it. And so that's it's one of my goals is to help him to be able to keep fanning that flame. And so, yeah, my oldest is looking at maybe running next year in college, and she's also a discus thrower, and she's thrown almost 100 feet in the discus, so a solid discus thrower. So it's one of those things. They're on a team where they do all sorts of stuff, and yeah. But again, like I look at our sport and just think it's a lifetime. It's I met the women's St. Louis Marathon champion of like, I don't know, 10 years ago or whatever. Can't remember her name. I apologize. She ran like 2:52, and in high school she was a college goalie. Like you meet people. Bill Rogers, I don't think ran for a lot of his life and smoked a pack of cigarettes a day or whatever, and becomes the Boston Marathon champion. There's so many crazy stories out there that running is something that you just need the ground, and you have access to get it done.
Yeah, that's huge. And that's when I first started coaching, it was about results and accolades and state championships and those sorts of things. As I've evolved, my goal is to make lifelong runners. And I'm same age as you. I'm 48. I ran a 50K on Saturday. I'm still getting out there and trying to get it done. So it's like I want kids to be able to do this when they're my age and still enjoy it and have a passion for it and just love it. It's fun to run, just get out there and move your body and do those sorts of things. And again, you don't need much. You need a pair of shorts and a pair of shoes and t-shirt and you're good to go.
Yeah. That's awesome. I'm impressed. 50K is no joke.
Yeah. I somewhere along the way, like 13 years ago, I took the leap into ultra marathons and have been doing 50Ks, 50 milers, 100 milers, and finished the Leadville 100 3 times. And
wow.
So yeah,
Leadville's legendary. That's something.
Yeah, it's a good time. Talking about all the things like Strava and the heart rate monitors and Garmin's and all these different things we have access to, and the coaching improving from the access of information. Have and the hot topic and the hot trend these days is the double threshold training. Is that something that you've dabbled with, and or have your highly academic students learned about it and asked you to try it?
Yeah. It's a great question. So like, so I'll answer your question, but like part of the process. So yes, we have dabbled with it this summer. So one of the things that Al taught me was he would talk about his experience as an athlete. And so remember him saying how like his coach at Illinois was a great coach, but he said the challenge was 1 week the coach would talk about an Arthur Lydiard athlete just won this major race. We're going to do a lot of miles. And then a week or two later, a Mihail Igloy athlete beats a Lydiard athlete, and they were going to do a lot of intervals. And he said during parts of his career, they would change based on like whoever's winning at the world level. And he said he got to the point it got confusing. And so as I've evolved as a coach, like I kind of back to pre-COVID, like I felt like a pretty good system, and I don't think there's ever a system that's perfect, but kids got to believe in it. It's got to be simple enough where they can execute it in and out of the season. And so that's where I'm being challenged. So you asked that, and like I was slow to the party because like in my mind, I don't want to be a gimmicky coach, and consistency over a long period of time is key, and academic stress is real. Over this last year, a couple of really good coaches that I'm at the Division III level that were kind of speaking in my ear. One of them, Derek Lawrence, is at Rose Holman, was talking to me about double threshold. He's like, I think you should do it, and I think you can do it there. And he kind of was talking me through this different ideas, things he was doing, and I was slow. And then Brian Cashdollar, another good friend of mine, who's a great coach at Manchester College, who is the one who really got me hooked on heart rate monitors. And so through all this last year, I'm trying not to be the coach that Al described, every year when he would kind of share the team. But I have also been trying to embrace fail forward. And so, yes, this summer, what we've started doing was I didn't want to do an overhaul, but as I started studying more, learning more, asking more questions of people, Alec Bastian is a steeplechaser, ran at University of Minnesota, is running professionally, is doing physical therapy school at WashU. So I've got to know him there, and he does a lot of double threshold training, picking his brain a lot. And so anyway, so this summer, I kind of came to the conclusion of we should try it with select athletes, not the whole team, just with select athletes. So what we've done it twice, and we're replacing our long run every other week. And again, we've done it twice. We'll end up doing it 4 times. And so this is an Alec Baston idea, where he was talking about replacing his long run in the future. And the idea of doing a mile warm up, mile cool down, and something as simple as marathon pace miles with a minute rest. And in a perfect world, you have access to lactate testing. We don't have that. So doing mile repeats and then kind of rinsing and repeating in the morning and afternoon. And the afternoon session actually doing on the treadmill. And 20 years ago, or when I was an athlete at North Central, if someone said run on the treadmill, I would have just said, you're not a real runner, you're not motivated, and now I'm all in, because the concept is you're controlling the variables, and with double threshold, it's so important. You want to keep the millimoles of lactate in the blood, whatever, low, and so don't leave it to risk. And so anyway, he was a big believer in that, and it made a lot of sense. And in the summer too, you're running in cooler temperatures. In the morning session, they're going outside with the heat. Run inside, to me, seemed almost paramount. Yeah. And so so the first time they did 4 times a mile in the morning, 4 times a mile in the afternoon. And then the next time they did 5 and 5. And then some people were warming up, if they're depending on their mileage for the day, were warming up and cooling down on the bike. So they would run a mile in the morning for a warm up, mile cool down, 4 times a mile. There's 6 miles. Do that times 2, that's 12. Well, a couple of those kids max was 12. So then the next time they did it, they did 5 and 5 plus 1 warm up, 1 cool down, then a bike warm up, cool down. And so the ones that have done it, they've liked it a lot. The more higher mileage may do up to 6. Probably some will just stay at 5 and some may stay at 4. So we're just, and it's just the idea of, if you're a junior, senior, you've done however many 13, 14, 15, 16 mile long runs, at some point a different stimulus might be nice. And so we're just trying that out. And then we do have one athlete that is doing genuine, like during the week, also elect double threshold. I think so one of my athletes who just graduated, who's a huge student of the sport, and his name's Kyle Puckett. And so he's really into it, been studying a lot. So he's actually helped put this together. And then we kind of ran it by Alec before we did it. So Max Latshaw is the young man doing that. And so he's kind of our guinea pig, but he's really loving it. He's a guy that can handle a lot train wise. So yeah, we're kind of selective. We've been selective with who we've chosen, and versus just making it a team thing. And then during the school year, that's a whole nother animal. And I'm just in my mind thinking, like, how is it possible? What would that look like? So at this point, we're starting small and just trying to fail forward and see if we can't get better by doing that, and see what we learn.
All right, we'll have to check in with you at the end of the season and see how it goes.
Yeah, I don't know.
Coach, so I must ask, we've had you on for almost an hour now, and we haven't even got into the women's team winning a national championship in track this year. You said in 2019 you felt like you had a pretty good system, and then COVID happened, and then everything kind of fell apart. Do you feel like you're back on track? Did you know that you were going to win a title this year, or did that kind of
Yeah,
just happen?
yeah, it's a great question. So our women's track team, um, I coach ultimately 4 teams. We got women's track, men's cross, women's cross. And so a lot of times they get lumped together. And so I would say where they're all at are all at different points. And I'd say we won the men's indoor title in 2022. So obviously that went well. But and winning this year obviously was great. On the women's side in track in particular, we knew we had a special group. I mean, the clientele was very special, and their freshman year was COVID. It was the fall of 2020, spring of 2021. And so, like, if you look at the team that we had, Eben Opata was not even on campus. She took classes remotely the whole year. So her freshman year, she was never on campus. Yasmin Ruff, who won the pole vault, did not take classes that year and was not a part of it because of COVID. And then you're looking at Emma Kelly, Ali Sarusi, and Emma Kelly really became the pillar of our team. But that year, their freshman year, we scored 1 point at nationals. I can't remember who scored it. I think it might have been, man, I don't remember. We scored 1 point. Yeah, we scored a point, and none of the first years were a part of that point. And then we came back the next year, and gosh, I wish I remember what place we got, but we got a lot better. And the last couple of years, we've been getting on the podium, having good things happen. Indoor of 23, we were second, and we were, in the hunt to win, and we really couldn't have had a better meet. And then I think we were, gosh, can't remember now, third outdoors. I don't remember. And then this year we had a chance to win indoors, and we had a great meet, and we barely lost. And going in the 4x4, we still had a chance to win. And so going into outdoors, we're thinking, okay, Emma Kelly, who just set the national meet record in the 800, the 800 really makes it difficult. She's an 8.4 runner. That was her background. And she had run a really, really good 1500 the year before, but had really trained for the 4.8, and does not run cross country. And so the 4.8 double is a very, very hard double. And so we had lightly talked about it indoors, looked at the schedule, and with 20 minutes rest, it's not even worth considering. Outdoors, I'm like, you know what? Emma Kelly's so good. We have to get more than 10 points. We at least need to brainstorm. How do we get more than 10 points out of her? I mean, she just set the national record, right? She's the best ever. To only run one individual event seems like a crime, to not consider something else. So Gordon Ryder, who is a magician, and he's been writing all of our workouts and just doing an amazing job with our 4.8 crew, sit him down, and we started brainstorming, what could we do? So in my mind, I'm thinking, let's train for the 15.8. And because the meet schedule had, gosh, like an hour and a half rest or something like that, a good amount of rest, very, very doable. But in my mind, that would alter how we needed to train her. And the 4.8 had 40 minutes of rest, which is a lot more than indoors. And Gordon, being the geniuses that he is, he knew exactly what to do. My instinct was 15.8. His instinct was 4.8. He's like, she can do 40 minutes. And I'm like, are you sure? He's like, I really think she can do 4. I'm going to start training to make that happen. And so he started adjusting his training in a way with that in mind. Our conference championship had a 30-minute window between the 4 and the 8. So he said, all right, we're going to talk to Emma and we're going to get her on board because she's got to want to do this. And we're going to cast the vision. And part of the vision is like, hey, we're not going to throw you in at nationals, never having done this. We're going to do it at the conference championship, knowing at nationals you'll have 10 more minutes. All right. And so we do it. We talk to her, and ice in her veins. Like, what made Emma so great? Many things, but one of it, she just never shows emotion, gets rattled. She's just even Steven. So we talked to her about it. She just nodding her head, going, okay, all right, I trust you, you know. And she trusted Gordon completely. And so conference championship comes around. She runs the 4.8. She runs, you know, we wanted her to run all out in the 4 so she could experience that. And she wins pretty easily, runs 2:10. Had run like 54 in the 4. And definitely looked mortal, but like strong. And she said, I definitely could have pushed. If someone came on me, I could have responded. Like, okay, that's awesome. So fast forward, as we're going to nationals, we're getting people around. I think knowing that Emma was doing the 4.8 sent a message to the team like, all right, all chips are in. We're pushing it to the center and we're going for this thing. And our sprint crew, Coach Williams, had just done an amazing job, get the sprint crew ready. Our 4x1's running incredible. You know, they're running a nation leading team. Our 4x4, we had 8 different people that had run a leg on a team that was national worthy. So we have a lot of depth there. Our throwers, Janae Bothe, coming on in the shot. Yasmin Ruffs, Coach Lore's like, I really think she can win it. So all these things were coming. Evan Opata, Coach Davis did a great job with her in the triple jump. So all these different pieces, but I really think the root was the coaching staff knew like we got to get more out of Emma to try to win this thing. And Emma was all on board. I think once the team kind of saw that, like the confidence just went way up and the pieces were there and the meet, I wouldn't say it went perfect, but it went really well. And the team just performed exceptional. And I do think, though, is that we planned for this 40-minute window. It should be noted there was thunderstorm, there was a delay, and they went to a rolling schedule. And all of a sudden, we looked like she was going to get about 15 minutes rest. And so we tell the team, you control 3 things: attitude, effort, and energy. And the night before, I'm like, all right, attitude, effort, energy. That's what we do. The morning of the final, we get a text message to coaches. Due to weather, we're moving to a rolling schedule. And I'm like, this has major implications for our team. And so we bring the team in, we call an immediate team meeting. And in my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know how this is going to go. This is like completely uncharted territory. 15 minutes versus 40 minutes is a huge difference. 15 versus 30, what you did at conference, totally different. But with a poker face, I'm like just telling the team, hey, you know, attitude, effort, energy. What else can you do? Let's do the best we can. Let's go. And talk to Emma. It's like, hey, like you're going to do amazing. Whatever you give us, but you are ready for this. And credit her, never batted an eye, never showed any change of emotion. Long story short, there ended up being like a 2-hour delay, and then the weather passed, and then they went back to a time schedule. And then the 8-4 got in, and I remember what event it was, and then the weather came back where it was on the radar, so they went back to a rolling schedule. So like the 5K went rolling, the 4x4 went rolling. But for us, we were lucky the 800 did not. And so anyway, I'm sure she would have done exceptionally well, but probably would not have won by the margin she did. but that was really the momentum was Emma getting it going. And I think, again, knowing that she was doing what she does and that we were going to use her in both, it was very clear that we were going for the team title. And we had, I think, lost by 2 points indoors. And we had girls who performed amazing at the indoor conference meet, national meet, leaving in tears because they had been so close so many times now. And I think a lot of them took it personal because they're all like, oh man, if I would just beat one more person. And they had honestly done really, really well. And so, as you know, it's like you're talking about kids who performed at a high level thinking they should have done better. And so we were really close, had tasted it, not quite got there. And all the kind of chips fell into place.
Coach, you got me fired up.
Hmm.
Yeah, Coach, thank you for sharing that with us. Really like to get the inside track to the story behind the story. So thank you for sharing that with us and our fans and letting us know kind of the magic behind what happened for you guys at the track and field nationals.
Absolutely.
Final four, Rich, or you got anything else?
Coach, one last one I have for you. Know, we know that the school is a very good academic school, very, very rigorous and tough standards. Is there anything out of the ordinary or unique at the university that maybe some student athletes are coming specifically for from an academic standpoint, like a particular major or particular school within the
I
school?
mean, just all of them are. I mean, I could go through each of them. You know, the business school has been ranked as high as number one, and like I think it's like 6% of kids get in. So that's kind of the hot one, I think. But I think a lot of times, like to me, the selling point is like I want to do architecture and I want to compete for a national championship. I want to do engineering and I want to compete for a national championship. It's the combination, I think, of you know, our athletic director would say, Anthony Asma would say, 4 years for the next 40, get a world class degree in one hand and a chance to compete for a national championship in the other. So I think it's so. Is there one particular major? I don't think so. I think uh, we've been ranked high in about everything. I think it's the holistic approach. We're a mid-sized school. You know, if a kid wants a tiny school or a huge school, we're not it. We tend to. A lot of people like it because we kind of can appease the masses. We're not in a city really. We're more like near a city. So if someone wants to be in a deep urban setting, WashU's not it. But if they want access to a city, WashU's great. And in the academics, it's easy to move around and all that. So and honestly, I think the biggest thing is just like for a really, really academic school, it's very people centric. So I just think in general, people are very active and personable. And I know there are some schools that kind of get a stigma of like people are really smart and it's very cutthroat, or they're very smart and they don't have fun. And I think WashU is known for like bringing really smart people in who like to do things and are good with people and are, engaging. And so kind of the multiple facets of it versus maybe one particular major. Um, you know, research, whatever. Just there's so many different things that people like to do that kind of draw them to WashU.
All that said, does it make recruiting easy?
Oh, so yes and no. So yeah, I mean, no doubt. Like, kids come to us first generally, and I think the hard thing is we're recruiting against other very good schools, and if they get into WashU, they get in pretty much everywhere, and then be able to afford it. And so our financial aid package is really good, but again, like it's so yes and no. I mean, I think I'm spoiled in some ways for sure. I know a lot of schools have to go out and go to all the high school cross country meets to recruit. For us, because we are so national, it's not realistic to do that. So I think that makes it easier. I'm not great at email. So like keeping up with email is like the tricky part. So is there ever a kid out there that emails me and I don't get back to, I apologize. Like the inbox that's the hardest part is keeping up. And so I think that, so it's a blessing and a curse. It's because we do get a lot of interest. It's not losing track of the ones that are getting distracted by kids that are good fits just by another email, but by finding those kids that are good fits for WashU, they have a personal connection, oftentimes are the best fits overall.
All right. Well,
All
appreciate you
right.
sharing all that. Jim, you ready?
Yes, sir. Coach, first one I got for you. Are you a coffee drinker?
No. Yeah. If I drink coffee, I'm gonna do a latte. I'm much more of a tea drinker.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that a daily thing or every once in a while with your
No,
tea?
yeah, I would say at night I like to drink tea. If I'm smart, I drink it because it helps me sleep. Um, yeah. When we had our first child, I went 0 to 60 with coffee, and then I just, it impact my sleep. So I'd wake up tired, so I'd have coffee, then I couldn't sleep, and then eventually I just said I gotta say no. Um, yeah, I love the smell of coffee, and I love the taste of coffee ice cream, things that are associated with coffee. But caffeine and me are not simpatico.
Sleep is the most important thing, isn't it, Coach?
Oh my gosh, don't get enough of it.
Yeah. Jeff, do you have any daily practices or rituals that you do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of Jeff Stiles?
That's a great question. Yes, I now I'm human, so this is not 365. But my goal absolutely is I spend daily time reading scripture, praying, and journaling. So I usually read and pray in the morning, and I journal before I go to bed. Does that always happen? No. It's always there's always things that come up. I would say that 90% of the time, that's probably part of my daily ritual. And I'm definitely a better version. And then the other one, honestly, is just exercise. Um, and I do not exercise 7 days a week. But when I'm my best version, I'm definitely exercising at least 5 days a week, usually like 5 to 6. And something that's really been impactful for me has been a workout group called F3. It's a men's workout group. Meets at 5:30 in the morning for 45 minutes, and we may do a running workout. Could be like a CrossFit type of workout. And I'm currently dealing with some health issues. I'm dealing with was labeled as what's it called? Adrenal fatigue. So I'm having some personal challenges myself which has been very frustrating. So I've not felt myself really since the end of the season. So I've been going to a more holistic doctor because I couldn't really figure out what was going on. So I've been taking some supplements and stuff, monitoring my sleep and diet. But with that, I would say that because I'm not able to work out like I like to, and I can tell. So I definitely think exercise also, I think for everyone, is really important. And so that's something that uh, I've been with my son, been really important to run with him in his development. And so now it's like some days I have to bike with him because I just don't have the energy to be able to run, even if it's like 3 miles, which has been discouraging. So I'm trying to stay positive and apply some of the lessons I often give my own athletes. My wife will often ask me, "What would you tell your athlete in this situation?" So I'm trying to learn from her to heed my own advice.
Hopefully that'll all sort itself out for you.
Yeah.
We've both been there.
Yeah. Coach, have you heard of Dr. Robert Morris? He has some adrenal supplements. Have you ever heard
I've
of
not.
anything? I'll send you a link when we
Yeah,
hop off this.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Coach, what are you listening to right now? Music, podcasts,
Hmm.
audiobooks? Are you reading anything?
Yeah, no, that's great. Yes. Let me see. Where did I put it? I can grab it. Um, all right. On Fire, just finished. John O'Leary. Can't recommend it enough. An amazing book. There are so many parenting, coaching lessons in it. Ultimately, it's about a man who actually is from St. Louis, ironically, but he, when he was 8, was playing with gasoline and fire. Did not go well, and he burned 100% of his body, third degree, other than his face and top of his head, and he had less than 1% chance of living. And he's now a motivational speaker. He's like 45, and he just tells his story, and it is incredible. So I just finished that. I'm definitely an audiobook person. So Screw Tape Letters is a C.S. Lewis book I'm listening to in the car. But I do listen to music. I'm kind of getting on off of podcasts simply because I feel like I would feel like a lot of them would be end up somehow not as edifying. And so the one podcast I really like, I think has been good for me is Steve Magnus. He's a running coach. He's got some good content. I've been listening. I can't remember what it's called, but it's been really
Is that
good.
on coaching, right? With
That's it.
Magnus Marcus?
Yeah. That's it. So I've just listened to like maybe just 2 episodes, but really good. Really enjoyed that. So yeah, so I'm definitely a book person, um, and yeah,
Awesome. Thank you. I'll check that book out.
yeah.
Jeff, last one I have for you. Do you have a guilty pleasure? I know you're from Iowa, maybe Casey's Pizza, or you spent some time near
Yeah,
Chicago, some deep dish, you got some daughters, maybe you're a closet Swiftie.
yeah. Guilty pleasures. Well, I've kind of cut this one out, but when I was when we were just had Anya, my oldest, I remember when I would need to uh, decompress, I'd be like, I would volunteer to go to the grocery store and Trader. We love Trader Joe's. We're a big Trader Joe's family, and they have these ice cream sandwiches with cookies. You know, it's ice cream in the middle between the cookies and chocolate chips in it. And not proud of this one, but I pounded the whole pack in the car while listening to Sports Center. So I
Let's
was
go.
like, I was like one of those where I was like, no sleep. My wife's probably at home, like, on less sleep than me, doing stuff. And like 20 minutes, I pounded, I think there's 4 of them. It was like 1,300 calories of ice cream sandwiches. So I don't do that anymore, but I have done that. So ice and being from Iowa, Casey's for sure. That was the best pizza where my parents lived last, which was in Washington, Iowa. There was a pizza ranch, but they also had a Casey's. And so that was when you wanted to get something good, that was you get picked up Casey's pizza. So no doubt Casey's is legit and very good. But ice cream sandwiches, ice cream, anything from Trader Joe's. Yeah, so the would be the ones I need to be leery of.
Airey bros get down with ice cream sandwiches,
Yep.
Oh
coach.
man.
You're speaking our language.
Toll House.
Yeah. Chipwich for
Yeah.
sure.
Coach, I got one last one because you reminded me you're from Iowa. Hawkeye fan, Cyclone fan, Purple Panther fan.
Yeah. Well, so one point in my life, Cedar Falls. I lived in Cedar Falls, so I was a big Northern Iowa fan. And then Iowa Hawkeye basketball used to always be on, so I became a Hawkeye fan before I left. Then we moved to Ames, so I became a Cyclone fan. I remember at one point I was wearing a Hawkeye jacket and a Cyclone hat, and one of our neighbors told me, "I'm like 8 years old." He's like, "You got to pick." and I became a Cyclone fan. So Fred Hoiberg is now the coach of Nebraska. He was Iowa State coach for a while and was a great player at Iowa State. He was actually my sister's eighth grade boyfriend and used to come over to our house. He's a really nice guy, and amazing athlete, like high school player of the year in football, basketball. But yeah, so and then Dustin, so really followed Iowa State basketball, kind of watching Fred, and then and as he coached too, and then Dustin Avey was a high school teammate of mine who played football at Iowa State. And then I kind of, as I gotten older, I've kind of fallen away where I honestly don't follow either, but I have become a big fan. I can't think of his name now. So I'm not too big a fan, I guess. But everything I've read in the Iowa State football coach, I really like. I wish I could think of his name, but I've just been impressed, and the fact he stayed there and been so successful. And because when I grew up there, they were not good. And yeah, so I would say if in doubt, Iowa State. I have kind of dwindled off. I've been in St. Louis now for 23 years and don't really follow it quite so much.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate all your wisdom that you shared with us tonight. And like Rich and I always say, we like doing this and talking to all the coaches we talk to because it gives us more teams to follow. And the older I get, the more I'm about the coaches with the wisdom than the wins and losses, even though you got a lot of wins and you bring home some titles, but just the fact that you say you coached a person and not the athlete, and you're dealing with the factors of the highly academics at the school. That's just top of my list. One of our first, I think, Division III running coaches, Rich, right? I believe so.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So
We had
y-
Sam on though, the 1500-meter
we
champion.
Oh
did.
yeah,
We did.
yeah,
Sam
yeah,
Wineza. But thanks again for your time.
absolutely,
Really enjoyed it.
yeah, honored.
Yeah. Jeff, it was great talking to you tonight. Good luck with everything this summer, and we'll be in touch to see how that double threshold goes for those kids.